Ashley's been making amps for many, many years, as you're probably aware, and we've done Class D for a very, very long time. We thought it was kind of time to reinvestigate what the state-of-the-art needs to be in power amplifiers. And we've really kind of thrown the rule book away in terms of how we design amplifiers. We looked at a lot of other competitive amplifiers. We looked at our own even, to be honest, and we found a lot of ways improving the power supply, the way the amp actually utilizes energy and manages power. And what we came up with is really a game-changing topology that hands down just blows away everything in the industry right now that we're aware of. We haven't found one yet that even comes close in terms of efficiency, in terms of low thermal output, and in terms of power utilization. So what we can tell you right now without hesitation is that the CA series, that's this new series here, is the coolest running, most efficient, less power consumption, constant power output amplifier available, period. And we would challenge anyone to find one that we would be happy to compare it to anything you got. That's the bottom line. There's 6 models. There's 2-channel and 4-channel, and those start at 500 watts times 2, 1,000 and 1,500 watts times 2, and then the same thing in a 4-channel configuration. The back is very simple, integrator friendly. All Euro block connectors here, so very easy for install applications. But for those instances where you might be able to drag a Pro mixer in and hook it up, we've also given you some XLR combo jacks there. Very simple setup here. We've got dip switches that let you do things like switch limiter and high pass filter per channel. There's also a VC port on here, so if you don't have any volume control ports on your front end, you can plug a standard volume control like our WR 1.1 directly into the amplifier and have zone control right there at the amp. So this is really designed for high-level performance installations. Think house of worship, theaters, performance spaces, school auditoriums, those types of things. However, here's the good news. They can do anything a high-performance amp can do. Run heavy power, really push hard. We've actually found it very challenging to find speakers that can handle the power this puts out. So that'll be your worst problem. These run 2 ohm stable, very even below that actually, but we have no problem running very low loads. These are also capable of outputting 70 volt directly. So if you have a need to use some high power amps for commercial, these can run 70 volt lines as well, 70 or 100 volt. One minor exception is that the 500 watt model has to be bridged to put out 70 volt, but the 1,000 watt and the 1,500 watt can put it out directly. So you don't have to switch it, you don't have to configure anything, it is 70 volt. So that's the CA series, very efficient. I can tell you that if you really do some serious listening in comparison, you're going to notice 2 things. One, these play louder, they play longer. You can drive them really hard, you'll barely kick over the input meters on this, and the air coming out of it, as hard as you run these, will be ice cold. These things generate virtually no heat. So that's the CA series. That is really a new standard. The technology, to wrap it up in a coinage, is called D-Max. So think of it as Class D on steroids. The FA series is basically a high power density series. These are compact Class D amplifiers, and they come in 3 configurations. There's a 2x125 per channel, a 4x125 per channel, both in a half rack unit, and then a 4x250 in a one unit. So here's what's unique about these. One is they are all ENERGY STAR certified. So by definition, that means they shut down automatically after about 29 minutes if you don't use them. If there's no input signal, they just shut down and go into sleep mode. And that means low power consumption, so that's a requirement for ENERGY STAR. So if you're concerned about power consumption, it's definitely a plus. You don't have to worry about it sucking power from your wall when you're not using it. Even at idle, most amps do consume a fair amount of power. The more convenience aspect of that, however, is that given the fact that they're very small, people are going to be invited to put these in places where larger amps typically don't fit. Right? So think of those applications where, I need an amp to drive those speakers. I could stick one of these behind the screen or in a kiosk or somewhere else, where I don't want an amp that's getting really hot because it's gonna, not gonna have a lot of cooling, that's number one, or it just simply doesn't fit. And I don't need a 500 watt power amp to run a couple of little comm speakers. So just the right amount of power, just the right size that fits into those nice little tight spaces where it becomes a challenge normally. The other thing about these is that they are low impedance 70 volts selectable per channel. So again, mix and match. You can have one side doing 8 ohm, the other side doing 70 volt. So they're flexible in that regard. The other cool feature that the half U units have is a power sharing feature. So that means I can shift the load from one side. There's basically a 250 watt power supply on the pair, and I can take that 250 watts and divide it evenly, or I can shift it from one side to the other. As long as I don't exceed 250 watts, I can have any load that I want on either channel. So that's a really cool thing. And you don't have to set anything, it just automatically matches the load. The rack ears, as you see here, come with the 1U guy. We left it optionally for the half rack units for the reasons I mentioned, is that more than half of the customers for the half U guys are going to stick this somewhere where they're not mounting it. There's a rack kit option available, which mounts 1 or 2 side by side, and there's also a flange mount for table mounting. So it fits on the bottom and mounts it underneath the table or on a wall if you need to do that. You'll notice that the rack, the fan cooling on, there's a little micro fan in here, which is very quiet, by the way. It only kicks in when an amp is really getting pushed hard. But you'll notice here it's got venting at the back, venting on the sides. So basically pulls in air from the sides, spits it out the back. And what's nice about it is if you put them side by side, there's still flow through because the vents are lined up. So there's other things here. There's some dip switch assignments back here that can do things like lock out the front panel. You can set the input gain sensitivity. You can switch high-low impedance per channel. Some basic things like that. So that's the FA series. All of these are basically ready to ship. We have some of these in stock in limited quantities now, but all of these are shipping by end of January, early February at the latest. So very, very soon. Speakers are on the boat on the way here. So literally. So that's all the new stuff, and thanks for joining us.